I'm George Hutton, and you are listening to the Mind Persuasion Podcast. Today we continue our study of weaponized hypnosis. For more information, please visit mindpersuasion.com/weaponized-hypnosis. Today we'll be talking about linguistic presuppositions used for ego attacks. Imagine your worst nightmare from elementary school or later. If you were popular, nothing was better. If everybody hated you, nothing was worse. Our hypersensitivity to our social status and the opinions about us from our social peers stems from our days as hunter-gatherers. Back then, all you had was your social status. How you were perceived by your peers was literally a matter of life or death. How easily you lived was directly related to your social status. The higher you were within the tribe, the easier things were. The lower you were, the more difficult things were. This was measured continuously. In modern times, a negative social opinion is just as devastating, and a positive social opinion feels just as fantastic. That's why for many, school is either the best time of our lives, when our relative social status reaches a peak, or the worst time of our lives, when our relative social status is at its lowest. This is what we will be targeting with the linguistic presuppositions. The technique is simple. Imagine the worst possible insults you might hear or give to others in a high school setting. Nobody likes you. Everybody hates you. Everybody secretly talks about you behind your back. Last week when you were sick, the teacher spent the whole day telling everybody what a loser you are. There's a secret list going around, and it has all the reasons why none of the boys or girls will ever date you. Just listening to these may bring up painful memories. Remember, these are the linguistic and emotional equivalent of ramming your car keys into somebody's eye. It's not something you do to your friend during lunch. It's only something you do to somebody else that is purposely trying to harm you. If a potential rapist or murderer approached you on the street and you stood there cowering and trembling, he would know you are an easy target. But if you immediately spun around, keys in your fist at the ready, with each key protruding from between your fingers like a weapon, they would give you a pass. Just practicing these and imagining that you are saying them while looking at others will give you a very powerful eye contact and other nonverbal communication that indicates how foolish it would be to openly insult you. Consider that the more you practice these by writing them out loud and having out loud imaginary conversations with your enemies, the less likely you will ever need them. Just knowing they are in your back pocket will be enough. For best results, you would use the very same pattern they used, but instead of noticing the implied idea or insult and questioning it, you simply use the same pattern to deliver an embedded ego destruction technique. Since most of us use these presuppositions unconsciously, the insult, if it uses the same pattern, will seem familiar, but they won't know why. This feeling of familiarity will be associated with the insult itself, making them worry if it's actually true. This will have a very devastating and lasting effect, just like poking them in the eye with your keys. Also notice that these are purposely vague. The listener will have to think about them to try to figure out what they mean. If possible, reference anything about the previous conversation. Once you deliver these, politely excuse yourself or simply remain silent and wait for them to respond. If they ask specific questions, maintain your silence or say something along the lines of, "I've probably already said too much." Substitute any appropriate authority figure for the boss or any specific social group for everybody. All of these imply in a vague way that everybody, social proof, and the boss, whatever authority is present in the situation, is against them. These need to be vague. If they do any research to try to find out what you mean and can't find anything, they might come back to you. Just maintain the need for secrecy and mention other people. For example, you can say, "They already told me I shouldn't have said anything. Please, seriously, forget I said anything." You can think of these as your own personal potential shock and awe campaign. If anybody covertly insults you, just drop these and leave the area. Even if people are around, nobody will be exactly sure what just happened, as they'll all be focused on your target who will have felt the sudden emotional sucker punch you just delivered and won't know how to respond. If you get put on the spot. These are very vague, so you will have a huge amount of plausible deniability. If anybody, even the boss, asks for specific information, admit that you are only reporting secondhand information and you don't want to name names. but chances are these will create a sense of dread in your target. If anything, they will hope desperately it isn't true and will be happy to forget it if nobody else says anything. Pattern. Counterfactual conditional clause, used when talking about something in the past tense which didn't actually happen. Maybe, but if you hadn't done what everybody already knows, you wouldn't be in such hot water with the boss. Has he talked to you about it yet? Maybe if you hadn't gotten out of hand, we might be able to do something about it. Unfortunately, everybody already knows what happened and the boss has to make a decision. Has he talked to you about it yet? I'm not supposed to say anything. Pattern. Negative questions, used to get you to defend the opposite of the idea they want to assert. Don't you think it's better to worry about why everybody is so angry with you? Don't you think it's a good idea to try and repair your damaged reputation? Have you discussed this with the boss? Pattern. Spurious not, used to confuse the issue and to get you to defend the opposite of what they would like to be believed as true. I wonder if it's not a good idea to focus on repairing your reputation. Has the boss given you any pointers yet? I don't know if he was just thinking out loud or not. Pattern. Stressed words or sentences, used to imply meaning without saying it directly. I don't know if you're holding up so well. I would be terrified if I had to give a presentation to all those people who secretly hoped I was going to get fired. Selection restriction. Assume that any particular choice will exclude other options. Based on what I heard, you really only have a few options left. None of them are anything I would look forward to, especially what I've been hearing from people. Pattern. Subordinate clause of time, before, since, after. After what happened, I don't know if you'll be able to recover. I mean, with what I've been hearing, it's too late to really do anything. Just don't tell them I told you. Potential question. Anything that questions the link between past actions and future potential actions. Do you think you should continue to keep doing this, especially with what people have been saying? Pattern. Comparative. Less, more, adjective plus ER. Based on what I've heard, and I was only really overhearing outside his office, but the more you keep doing whatever it is they are angry about, the less likely you'll be able to recover. Pattern. Quantifiers. Only, just, except. If it were only that one thing, you might be able to get back into his good graces, but as it stands, I'm not so sure. Has anybody said anything? Pattern. Generic noun phrases. Noun arguments or of groups or classes of people. The people that I've heard from think that it might be a good idea to update your resume after what happened. I'm not sure, but I don't think they've decided exactly what to do yet. Pattern. More quantifiers. Some, each, every, few, none. Everybody I've talked to has sort of mentioned that it's too late for you to do anything. I mean, nobody wants you to get fired, at least they haven't said it out loud, but they seem to be willing to accept whatever decision the boss will make. Pattern. Factive verbs and adjectives. Odd, aware, know, realize. I don't think most people realize how far gone this situation really is. Once the boss decides what to do, I'm sure he'll have a long heart-to-heart with you. Has he mentioned anything yet? He seems to be in a really bad mood recently. Pattern. Pseudo-cleft sentences. What is X about Y is. What is bothering me so much about what happened, or at least what I heard what has happened, is it's too late for you to do anything, and I heard the boss was really in a bad mood because of it. Pattern. Cleft sentences. It is, it was. It is because it is already out in the open and everybody knows about it that makes this such a delicate problem. And since the boss is so angry, I don't think he knows how to handle it. Had he mentioned it to you? He's probably waiting until he's calmed down. Please don't tell him I said anything. I really need this job. Change of time, verbs and adverbs. Begin, stop, continue, proceed. Once he stops worrying and finally figures out what to do, I don't think it's going to be easy. Do you have a solid list of references? Pattern. Relative clauses. Noun plus who or which. People I've known that have been in this situation have usually had to change cities. I mean, when word gets around pretty fast and it's already gotten out of control, just don't mention that I told you ahead of time I really need this job. Pattern. Commentary, adjectives and adverbs. Luckily, fortunately, happily. Unfortunately, the cat's already out of the bag, and since everybody has been gossiping so much about it, it's already gotten out of control. I'm not sure which the boss is going to try and fix first. Has he mentioned anything to you? I heard he might just let HR handle it. You might want to get ready. Pattern. Repetitive verbs and adverbs. Return, repeatedly, replace. Well, once that genie gets out of the bottle, it's kind of hard to return things to where they were. I mean, people are already saying things about you that make me kind of worry just to be seen talking to you. I better get out of here. Pattern. Ordinal numbers. First, second, third, another, next. What might happen next is they might have to call in an outside consulting company to smooth things over. At least that's what I've been hearing. I'd update my resume if I were you. Pattern, comparative as. Few things are as uncomfortable as coming into work every day and wondering if this is the day the hammer is going to fall. How are you holding up? Pattern, complex adjectives, new, former, old. I suppose they'll need to come up with a new policy to handle these things, or maybe once you find a new group of friends, you'll stop behaving that way. Pattern, repetitive cue words, to, also, either, again, back. It's too bad when relationships are ruined so much you can't put them back the way they were. What are you going to do now? Pattern, change of state verbs. Change, transform, turn into, become. Well, look on the bright side. They say we grow most from the most horrible mistakes, so the good news is that eventually you'll turn into a much better person because of what you just did. Pattern, change of place verbs, come, go, arrive, enter. Well, once you finally get over the blowback that is coming because of what I've been hearing, you might enter into a new phase of life where you can stop doing that. Pattern, pronouns, he, she, they. They're already saying that the boss is beside himself trying to fix your mistake. I mean, from what I've heard, it's an honest mistake that can happen to anybody, but I guess the boss doesn't see it that way. I'm George Hutton. Thank you for listening to the Mind Persuasion Podcast. For more information, please visit mindpersuasion.com/weaponized-hypnosis. I look forward to speaking with you again soon.